Regular meeting of the City Commission to order for Monday, February 10th, 2020. And will you please stand and join me in the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Is Pastor Shea here? Do not see him, or we will move on. Right now, we don't have any recognitions, and let's start with the roll call, please.
Moore?
Here.
Dennison?
Here.
Downey?
Here.
Turney?
Here.
Whedon?
Here.
You have a quorum.
Thank you very much. We're now down to public comments. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to discuss any item on the agenda. Mr. Viganski, if you would like to write comments, you can hand them to the clerk and they will read your comments. Anyone want to be recognized to come forward?
How can you do that? I mean, how much money am I gonna have to spend on attorneys?
Anyone else want to come to the podium?
You don't really have the right to take that away from me. This is an open forum meeting. You have to either acknowledge me or not acknowledge me.
You're not acknowledged, and please quit disrupting the meeting. Is anyone else wanting to come forward to the podium?
All right, my name's Leland Payne, 113 East Front Street, Bucktown Nutrition. Told you last meeting that I would do a little more research, come back if anybody had any ideas. The only thing I could come up with, talking to the people I could talk to, is they believe in signs, customer parking only, employees and business owners park in the parking lots. And maybe fine the business owners that aren't enforcing their employees to comply. And that's what we come up with from the couple that I could talk to.
Great. Thank you for your comments.
I'd really like for you to publicly explain how it is you can keep me from my First Amendment rights.
I'm providing your First Amendment rights, Mr. Viganski, by you are allowed to write your comments down on paper and the clerk will read it. But when I've given you recognize you to come to the microphone, you've been disruptive. I'm not going to give you an opportunity to be disruptive. So please, if you have comments to make, write them down. The clerk will read your comments. We'll all hear them. And apparently you have no comments. Is there anyone else?
I'm just kind of concerned, I get something about parking, but mine's the parking in the back and not on the streets, does that go now?
Yeah, you can go now because it's talking about something that's coming on the agenda.
Hi, Dan Benock, B&W, Old Village Inn. My comment was, I brought it up before and I'd like to try it again. Is there any way, like behind my building, and behind McCoy's and the other businesses, in like an L shape, there's like 4 or 5 spots behind mine with like handicapped, and then you start going down behind McCoy's, there's another handicap and more parking. We got the recreational weed being discussed, being sold within a week, 2 weeks, so we're gonna have more and more traffic that way. We got Julie Capron's bringing her offices across the street into the old lawyer's office. Be more and more people. We want to provide parking for the people that are going to spend money downtown and spend tax money downtown, so we got more money to do things. What I'd like to do, and I'll personally buy them, won't cost the city any money. I think we can get away with 4 signs. We do the arrows pointing into each other. It says business, parking, however you got, run it by a lawyer, the verbiage on it. Customer parking only. Not for B&W, not for McCoy's, but for everybody downtown. We got business having their employees parking in these spots, the prime spots. We got older people that need to be downtown, maybe handicapped. We should have business, customers for the businesses only, in that L shape. There's plenty of parking in the back, as long as the city don't pile big snow piles, where the parking spots are, and eliminate 3 or 4 more spots. There's plenty of room at the far end. I think it would be the north end of the municipal parking lot. But if we get 4 signs with arrows pointing that way, we don't got to put signs up all the way down. We can just have them pointing inward. That way we give the police department the wherewithal to do something. Right now, being a municipal parking lot, they can't do nothing about it.
Okay.
That's all I had. Thanks.
Thank you very much for your comments. All right, let's move on to the consent calendar. And I would like to entertain a motion to amend the consent calendar to remove 1 item.
I'll make that motion to remove item B from new business.
Okay, we're postponing that to a future date. And
I'll support.
thank you. Is there any, let's go ahead and have roll call for that.
Whedon,
Yes.
Attorney,
Yes.
Downey,
Yes.
Dennison,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes,
motion carries.
great, thank you. And now let's have a motion to amend the amended consent calendar.
Approve. Approve the amended calendar.
Mhm.
I'll make the motion.
Okay, and is there support? Okay, we have a motion and support. Let's have a roll call on that.
Attorney,
Yes.
Downey,
Yes.
Dennison,
Yes.
Warren,
Yes.
Whedon,
Yes.
motion carries.
Okay, very good. All right, now we're to Kim Haver. Here's the Buchanan Dial Ride Report. Thank you.
Mayor Moore and Commissioners, I'm happy to be here. I haven't spoken to you for a year now, I believe. I think all of you are acquainted with me, but just in case you're not, I'm Kim O'Haver. I'm President of Transportation Management Incorporated. We are the contractor that manages and operates the Dial-A-Ride system here in Buchanan. Buchanan Dial-A-Ride has been around for over 40 years. We are the smallest public transit system in the state of Michigan. We have 2 active buses and a spare. We operate between about 3,500 and 3,700 vehicle hours per year. We have transported as many as 10,000 people in 1 year. It's usually between 7,000 and 8,000. That was a banner year for us, and that was a few years ago. I am very proud of Buchanan Dial-A-Ride, and I am very proud of the city of Buchanan for supporting Dial-A-Ride. The people that we serve are really invisible to the rest of us. We get in our garage, we get in our car, and we drive where we need to go. The people we serve don't have that option. They either don't have cars, they're seniors and they can't drive anymore. They possibly have disabilities and are unable to drive. These are the people that we take care of. These are the people that we take to the doctor, to the grocery store, to the hospital, and to their jobs. And I go through the driver logs every month, and I can tell you, oh yes, we've made a lot of trips to the doctor and a lot of trips to the hospital because I see where they're going. And so I'm just very proud that a city of Buchanan's size cares so much about its people that you all are willing to support the Dial-A-Ride system. It's just a wonderful thing. As a part of all that package of paper I sent out to all of you, I had a couple of pages of operating statistics. The first page, I compared fiscal year 2018 to fiscal year 2019. And looking at 2019 and looking at that difference column, you see a lot of numbers in parentheses. Well, you remember what January weather was like last year. It hit us really hard. We were closed just about every day of the last week of January because of the ice and because of the cold temperatures. And that was unprecedented in our history, to be closed that many days. So when you're a tiny system like ours, that really makes a dent in your numbers. And also when you have a few people who are regular riders, and one of them unfortunately passes, that takes a lot of trips. You wouldn't think that one person or two people would make that much of a difference, but they do when you're tiny, like we are. So that contributed to the decline in vehicle hours as well. I do have happier information to report for the first quarter of fiscal year 2020. Our numbers are up. They're looking very good. We are transporting some students, which we've done in the past. There are students whose home lives have been disrupted. And when that happens, the effort is to keep them in the school that they have been going to. And so we have been transporting them between Niles and Buchanan so that they can keep going to the school that they have always attended, just to have some stability in their daily life. And I'm delighted that we can do that. And so our numbers are up because that's 2 students every school day, so that adds a lot to our numbers. Are there any questions you'd like to ask me about the system? I could go on, and I don't want to keep you all here all night. So I've been doing this for 23 years, and so it goes back a long way. So fire away if you have anything you'd like to ask.
I have a question. Could you explain your consumer advisory group that you have and how often they meet and whether you need some new people or how that's going?
Sure. We have a group of 7 people. We call it the Local Advisory Council. It is something that we are required to have, but it's a real benefit to us because all of the spots except one, well, no, except 2, are people who actually use the system. And that's just a wonderful thing because this group gets together and there's a lot of discussion going on. I do a lot of talking, of course, but they let us know, okay, what's working, what isn't, what can we do to improve, that kind of thing. And these are engaged people. We meet twice a year. We meet every year in January to talk about the funding application. And then we meet again in June, just so I can bring everybody current on what's going on in the legislature and what's going on with the Michigan Public Transit Association. I'm on the board of that association, and that organization does an awful lot to advance the cause of public transit in the state. So there's a lot going on in our industry, and it's fun to be able to keep people current in that regard. We have one gentleman who I believe is well into his 70s, who has served as our chair since we set this group up in 2006. And he works at the Walmart, and we take him to the Walmart on a daily basis. So we schedule our meetings so that right after the meeting is over, we can take him over to the Walmart for his job. But it's a terrific organization, and I believe Julie included the minutes of our most recent meeting. There we go. So that you would be able to review them and see what kind of work we do.
That's great. And is the complement on that board full now, or how often do you need to recruit someone?
We have one spot that we got a new director for the Chamber of Commerce, and somehow I missed that. So now I have the name of that person, and I will be contacting her so that she can join our group in June. At the time that we set up a seat for a representative of the Chamber of Commerce, I think we were the only local advisory council that I know of that had a spot for that person, and it's a designated spot. And I think that's important because we also serve the businesses in this community. And I think it's important for businesses to have a voice on that advisory council, because we might not hear your concerns at the time. So I've noticed a few more organizations doing that now, but I think we were the first, and I think that was pretty cool. And that was Alice Crane that made that recommendation to me initially, and I thought it was just a wonderful idea.
That's great. Are there any other questions?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
How many employees do you have?
Well, we have 2 full-time drivers. We have a couple of people who fill in from Berry and Bus if they're needed. We have my business partner, who is the operations manager of both Berry and Bus and Buchanan Dial Ride. They're housed together in Berrien Springs, both systems are. So we share operations management, which is the day-to-day. We share dispatchers, and we share the mechanic. So that helps to split the costs between the 2 systems. That lowers costs for each transit system. Because if Buchanan, if we had to do this all by ourselves, and we had to have a full-time operations manager, and we had to have me to do all the paperwork, and the drivers, and a mechanic, and the dispatchers, that would be cost prohibitive. So this lowers the costs a great deal for us, so that we're able to operate those systems.
What does it cost an individual to ride?
You would ask me that.
I would.
It is $1.50 if you're within the city limits. If you are considered a senior citizen or if you have disabilities, it's 75 cents. And it goes up to, may I get my brochure? If you want to know what it is to go outside of the city limits. I can look
Sure,
that
go
up
ahead.
for you. Okay. And I'm so sorry for my ignorance, but I run 4 systems, and it's hard to keep all of those numbers straight. Okay, if we go beyond 1 mile outside of the city limits, a regular trip is $4, and a senior trip or a person with disabilities is $2. Children under 1 year of age are free. Children under 12 accompanied by a paying adult pay the half fare, which would be 75 cents or $2. And a student attending school in Buchanan or a school activity is $1 per trip.
And what is
And
it?
this
that-
is our very snazzy brochure.
What's your definition of senior?
60 and over.
Okay. Sorry to hear that. Okay. All right. Are there any other questions? Did you have some more
One more
questions? Okay.
Okay, as I'm looking through this brochure, I'm looking at the size of the bus and all the ADA equipment on it and everything, and all those moving parts cost a lot of money. Have you guys thought about smaller vehicles? Because I noticed that 10 to 20% of your customers that have disabilities or are elderly,
Mhm.
but there are a lot that aren't.
We actually have about a 2/3 to 1/3 breakdown.
Okay.
That's our average. Our buses seat 8 people and 2 wheelchairs, or 10 ambulatory people. That is the smallest bus.
Mhm.
You can't get a bus smaller than that. I've spoken with our operations manager. What do you think about the vans? The van options that are available under the state contract are not good options. They're hard to get the wheelchair in. Sometimes you have to get the wheelchair in and then try to turn it around. They're heavy. They're not easy to deal with, and she had just said, oh, please, let's stick with the baby buses if we possibly
I
can.
was thinking in the smaller. I'm thinking like the students, a Prius. Have an additional vehicle, which is a Prius.
Yeah, we do not have a Prius on the state contract right now, and we buy from the state contract
Yeah.
because it's 80% federal, 20% state, so it's all paid for.
Mhm.
If we get any vehicle that is not on the state contract, we have to pay the difference. And so it does help keep the costs down to get that baby license.
Thank you.
We can always bring it up again, though.
Okay, any other comments, questions? Thank you, Kim.
You're welcome.
We appreciate it, and we'll be seeing you in a minute when we get to the business.
Good.
Okay, and our next report is by Chief Gaines, the yearly report for the city police department.
Good evening, Mayor, Commissioners. Thank you for the opportunity to let me talk about our police department here and talk to you about some of the things that we did in 2019. First, before I start, I know you guys had a flyer in there reference Chief Marks stepping down from the police department. This is his retirement party for being a chief of police only. He is still the city manager for some time. But, you know, we're trying to push this out. Hopefully, we can get as many people can attend as possible. This is just a way for the police department and the law enforcement community to thank Chief Marks for all his hard work for the many, many years that he has done in his career. 15 years here with the city of Buchanan, and I'm not sure how many with the sheriff's department, but a few.
Mhm.
So, with that said, 2019 was a busy year for the Buchanan City Police Department. In your packet, I had a breakdown of the service calls that we had. We ended up handling 3,210 calls for service in the year 2019. That's very close to the same amount of calls that we had in 2018, which was 3,216. So we were just a couple calls down. But for 8 officers, that's what we have. Back in 2009, we actually had 7 officers and a part-time assistant chief that handled those calls. So a very busy year for the police department. We ended up patrolling 35,254 miles around this small little town to make sure that everything is safe. And we ended up with 183 arrests for the year 2019. We wrote 520 citations. One of the things that our officers have to do is ongoing training. These are things that we have to do yearly. Some things such as legal update. This is where we have to attend in any new laws, any change in the laws. We have to be updated on that to stay current with what's going on, and there's a lot of those. So annually, our officers go to a legal update. We have some specialty training. We had some officers go to autistic safety, some Michigan medical marijuana laws, which, as you guys all know, including Deb, that those laws change quite a bit, and we need to stay on top of that with what we have going on here in our community. So that was some of the classes that our officers took. We also train annually with the Sheriff's Department for our physical control tactics that is put on by the Sheriff's Department, and they train us and we train with them. One of the things that we were able to do was host a patrol response to an active shooter course here in the city of Buchanan. We had it at the middle school, and what that was is we invited the Berrien County Sheriff's Department Tactical Response Unit who put on this training. And this training was not only for all of our officers, but for all the officers in the county and also outside of the county. Because when we have one of these events, we're not sure where people are going to be coming from. We all go. And once we're there, we're all trained to do the same thing. So it makes us be able to handle these situations a lot easier, a lot quicker. So we were able to host that, and that was really nice to have them there. One of the other trainings that we have is firearms training. We train 4 times a year with our officers and their firearms. That's done right out here on Mayflower at the gun range. One of the things that makes this department unique is our reserve unit. Not every department in the county of Berrien has a reserve unit. Very few have a reserve unit the size of ours. Last year in 2019, we had 18 reserve members. With those 18 reserve members, they put in 1,837 volunteer hours. That's a lot of hours. That's a lot of help to us as a police department. Those guys are out there assisting us. They're riding along beside us. They're seeing and going through the same things that we are. They're helping us with the events that we have, helping with security. This year, we've hired 5 more. We've got 3 in the Reserve Academy that's currently going on. Graduation is in April. So that will take our numbers up to 22. Some of the events that those reserves help us do is the Thrill on the Hill and parades. The Memorial Day Parade, the Homecoming Parade, it takes a minimum of 10 officers to secure that parade route from Red Bud down to the school, and if we go out to the cemetery. That's a minimum of 10. That's what we can get by. We like to have a lot more. Just kind of give you an idea of what we have to do when we have these events. Also, they help with the traffic details on the 4th of July when we have the big event out in Red Bud. We have somewhere around 25,000 people come through our town usually, and sometimes all at once, it seems like. So we use them out there to help us with the traffic detail and make sure that the traffic flows through the city appropriately. They do security for the high school football games and basketball games. Holiday patrols. What the holiday patrols are is something we started a few years ago, and that is between the month of November, usually around Thanksgiving, all the way up to the first of the year. Statistically, it's shown that that's when we have more robberies, more larcenies. So these reserves come in on their own time. They ride with officers, or maybe they jump into a squad car by themselves, and they go around and they check businesses. They go in, they talk to people and let them know that, hey, we're out here, this is what's going on. So we try to step up our patrols, make it look like we've got more people than what we have during that time, just to make sure that the businesses are safe. Also, we do a lot of the events that's on the trail. We do the 5K run. That takes a lot of people to block off those roads when we have those 5K runs, but the reserve unit helps us with that. Another group that we have that's a volunteer group is our chaplains. We have 4 chaplains. They're an on-call division. If we need someone to come and maybe help with some spiritual guidance, maybe it's a very difficult situation that the people are in, we call the chaplains out. They help us and help the citizens and be able to talk to them and maybe give them some resources on what they're going through at the time. The chaplains also help with security. They do parades and they do our Thrill on the Hill and stuff. You'll see them, they usually wear a white uniform, and they're different than our reserves, but they can also kind of do the same things. One of the things that we've been really fortunate here at the City of Buchanan Police Department is our community policing program. It's very dear to my heart. I love these events. One of the programs that we just started last year was our RAD program, Rape Aggression Defense. Basically, this is a self-defense course put on by our own officer, Brianna Schmitz, who is a certified RAD instructor, and she teaches young ladies and women basically self-defense and what to do if they're attacked, and just some safety awareness. I mean, it's not all about the hands-on stuff, but she goes and she talks about the awareness of when you're out and about, what to be looking for. It's a great program. We just got started. We're looking at having some classes late spring, some summer classes and some fall classes, so we'll be putting those out as soon as she can get some dates set. Another good program that we have is our DARE program. DARE was big back in like the 80s. Then a lot of departments just kind of dropped off and kind of dropped away. Of course, you know, the money kind of fell away from that, but that was something that our department stayed with. And we've had a DARE program for many, many years. And our Sergeant Harvey Barnett, is our DARE officer. He goes in and he talks with the 5th graders, and he puts on this lesson. And it's just amazing to see these young adults, maybe a little bit older than young adults, go up to Harvey in the community and say, hey, you were my DARE officer. I had you for DARE. And just the impact that he has made on these people and hearing some of their stories, it's pretty good. We want to hang on to that program, and as long as we can, we will. We coordinate that with the school. Again, Harvey's in with the fifth graders, and matter of fact, graduation is going to be April 15th, 7 o'clock at the high school. If anyone's available, it's a great time to see these young boys and girls graduate from this. There's just a great time to see these kids and the things that they've learned, and they stand up and they give testimony on certain things that they've gone through. I don't know if you've ever been to one of the graduations, but it's really neat if you have the opportunity. National Night Out's another big thing that we have, and probably most of you guys have been there. We just call it the night that we have a big old party for the citizens of Buchanan. We have food, we have a big old slip and slide, and we have the fire department there and hose everybody down. It's just a great time. We have 200 to 300 people, sometimes even more, show up depending on the weather, and great time for the community. Shop with the Cops, another program. That takes no city money. That's all donations, donated by citizens, donated by officers, donated by businesses, for us to be able to take struggling kids out to go shopping with police officers. And last year, our mayor, she went with us, and what a great opportunity that was. We did 18 kids. Our small department touched 18 kids in this community. And you know, I know personally, again, when I'm out and about, I see someone, it might have been 5, 6 years ago, they come up to me and, hey, Officer Tim, I remember you. Remember me? We did the Shop with a Cop thing. That's what we need to do, is impact those kids, and that's what this department is doing. You know, we're starting with them small. So that's a great program. Another thing that we do is Thanksgiving baskets. This year we did two families that's needed in the area. That is all donated by officers. We get together and we pair this basket with turkey and everything, all the fixings and everything. And through the school, we find out of a needy family, and we go and we deliver that basket. So those are just some of the things that we do as community policing. We also have, I don't know if people are familiar with this, but we probably 5 years ago got this unwanted prescription container. And it's in the lobby of our police department. What this is if you have unwanted, expired prescriptions, and you don't know what to do with them, you can bring them up there, put it in there. It's like a mailbox. You open it up, drop it in there, close it, and it's all secure. But it gets those prescription drugs, number one, not down the drain. Number two, out of everybody's houses, because you know, we know that we can't leave those laying around for anybody. And it's just amazing. This year, I'm sorry, in 2019, we collected 226 pounds of unwanted, expired prescription out of our single box. So that's huge. I mean, the community is really wanting to get rid of those things, getting them out of their houses. One of the other programs that we've been working with is our emergency preparedness. Now, I call it this because what we do is we've had churches, we've had businesses contact us and say, hey, you know, we'd like to talk to someone, have you come out, look at, you know, safety and security, what we can do, what happens if. And we've got officers that do that. We got officers that come out, go to the church, look at what's going on, say, hey, this is some things, maybe some lighting, maybe some locks, maybe this is a program you need to look at, those kind of things. We just, a couple months ago, worked with the library on their evacuation plan. So these are things that, you know, we can get involved in the community. We can help them understand how to be safe. And that's just going to help us, because if we can get those guys to buy into what we say, that's just going to keep them more secure and cut down on our calls. So with that said, some of the things we really want to do is more community policing programs. Not sure what those are going to be, but we're going to continue to do that. That's what this police department is really pushing for. You know, it's about, yes, there's tickets, there's arrests, but getting in the community, getting in with those young people, getting them to know us, building those relationships, is going to drop those arrests, is going to drop those tickets, because they know us. We got that relationship. So those are some of the things that we're looking for, the goals in the 2020, is get back into that community. We're in here a lot. We're in here a lot more than other departments. We're going to get in here more and come up with some better ideas to get into that community, to get to know these kids and adults, and just work to make this a better, safe community for everybody. With that said, I would entertain any questions that you guys would have for me.
Anyone? One question that always comes up in our goal-setting sessions is, do you have plans to put officers on bicycles or other foot patrols through the downtown or the farmer's market area?
Sure, we've done that in the past. Actually, we have 2 bicycles, and a lot of the times, it's some of our younger reserves that do that. That's why it's nice to have our reserve program, that we can put some of these officers out there. And yes, we do that. One of the places is the trail. We like to get out there and ride down the trail and make sure that everything's safe. So, yes.
Okay, very good. Commissioner Downey?
The RAD classes, future classes this summer, are they typically in the evening, morning? I was wondering if you might open them up to maybe like the stay-at-home moms who have time during the day when the kids are at school.
Sure, those are good things, and as Officer Bree looks at that, that's a great suggestion, and I'll take it back to it, to kind of change those hours to be a little more flexible, so they're not just in the evening. Good point.
Anyone else? Thank you very much.
Thank you, guys.
We appreciate it. And while you're up here, we're gonna just probably move right into your next item, which is the downtown parking ordinance, which we're all interested to hear what you have to say about
Sure.
that.
Let me just find a couple little notes that I have here, okay? Anticipation of this, I put in you guys' packet the parking ordinance. So that way we have it, we can refer to it and look at it and see. Our parking kind of changed in August of 2019, at least the way that we do enforcement. We've always kind of had an issue with parking downtown and in other places, but in August, we were told, and it's been determined through the courts, that marking tires, chalking tires is unconstitutional. So that kind of really tied our hands in law enforcement on how we're going to enforce the 3-hour parking downtown. So with that said, there's been many conversations on what we can do, what we can't do, what's legal, what isn't legal, what we can do to prepare ourselves for court if somebody does fight these tickets. You know, right now, we have to monitor the vehicle. We have a 3-hour, so that means that officer has to watch that vehicle for 3 hours, make sure it doesn't move. Because if it moves and goes around the block and comes back by law, legally, it starts all over again. So just because we drive through town and we see a car here, we don't know if that car left, turned, and came back and parked in the same parking spot. When we chalk the tires, obviously we could tell that, because when it moved, the chalk would go away. We can't tell that. So what we have to do is we have video, but video has to be time-stamped. We have to now watch that video and then record that whole 3-hour session on that vehicle. So those are a lot of things that changed with the downtown parking. So what we've done, and thanks to Mr. Payne, who's been seriously a big help to us, and we've had many conversations, and I thank him for being concerned about this. We do a lot of complaint driven. So when we receive a call that, hey, this is going on, this is what we do, and we go and we try to take care of it. So as of August 2019, this is what we had to deal with. So as time has gone on, and it's been a while, kind of started thinking, all right, what are we going to do here? How long is this going to go? We really need to have some conversations, and that's why we're here today. That's why these two gentlemen in the audiences here today. So after our last commission meeting, the city manager and myself started having conversation, and we started thinking about, okay, what's reasonable? What is reasonable parking for the city of Buchanan? Reasonable as 3-hour parking? Is that reasonable? Is it reasonable to have citizens expect to be front row parking? Finding a decent parking spot downtown? Is it reasonable for a business owner to park downtown? Is it reasonable for a employee of a business to park downtown? How reasonable is it for law enforcement to enforce these issues? So those are some of the questions that we have to ask ourselves. What's reasonable for our parking down there? And as we look at our parking ordinance, it was written quite a few years ago. Is this parking ordinance reasonable for what we have going on now? Is this something that we need to look at, maybe change, maybe add something, maybe take something out? So with those thoughts, with that conversation with the city manager, we've asked the city attorney to look at this ordinance, give us some legal advice. Are we doing what's reasonable? Because we can write a ticket, but I gotta defend that ticket in court. So I wanna make sure it's reasonable. I wanna make sure it's lawful. So those are things that we have to look at. The commission, police department, those kind of things. So I leave you with that, and that's kind of where we're at with this parking ordinance for the downtown area. As hopefully our city attorney will get back with us and give us a review of, hey, this is perfectly fine, maybe that's what he's gonna say, maybe not. So that's what I have for you as of right now. And again, I would love to entertain a question.
Commissioner Downey.
Okay, I'm on the DDA.
Sure.
Pat and I are, and we're gonna have a big sewer project coming up here in the next few years, and they're gonna, basically tear up the whole downtown. And I brought up the fact that we have to redo the whole streetscape downtown. We could rearrange parking, change it, diagonal parking, even as wild as one-way streets, which everybody frowns on that. But it could be anything you
Sure.
want.
Yes.
I also threw out, when I lived in Florida, they had kiosk parking. You had one central, well, you actually had a couple computers on the road there, and people would go put in their license plate number, or I had an app on my phone, you put in the space you're in, and you're good as long as it goes, and it helps at least people subconsciously think, I'm paying for this. So maybe they'll be a little more self-conscious about the parking down there. Now, that's a couple of years down the road, so we gotta come up with something before then, even if the DDA decides to help chip in for something like that, or, whatever else we come up with. But I guess the main thing is, we can start thinking about how to reorganize the parking downtown and see if there's a better system for what we've got.
Sure. And especially if everything's gonna change downtown. And I agree with you, it's not like, well, let's just put it off till whenever this happens. We need to do something now. And again, like I said, that's why we went to the attorney to say, where are we at with this? Also, to have him check on, I know it's in the Court of Appeals, our chalking issue. Where is it at? Is that gonna be the decision, or where are we at with that? So he is looking on that too. As far as everything I can read, it's still in the Court of Appeals. If, they decide that it's not unconstitutional, maybe we can get back to doing that and enforcing that. But as of right now, it has been, in the 6th District Court, ruled unconstitutional.
If that was approved, what is that, and you were able to go chalk tires again, what does that do to your operations, your daily routine with?
What that does with us is that's able to stand up in court. So chalk a tire.
But I mean, do you have somebody that you can have available downtown during the busiest times of the
We can
day?
have one person chalk it and go back and check it in 3 hours. Where now, we have to have somebody always checking it. So if we get busy and we have to go away for another call, then we can come back and we don't have to sit there and watch that vehicle. That's the difference. Chalk has been held up in the court until, they ruled it unconstitutional. But when you mark it with the chalk, if it doesn't move, that chalk is still there. So with that, we're able to write tickets and we don't have to be there for 3 hours. That's the big difference, that we can do our other business and not sit downtown watching one vehicle or multiple.
Do you have a comment? But I agree with Commissioner Downey that this is an opportunity we have to really revision what is possible downtown.
Sure.
But in the meantime, I think it might be reasonable for us to try a few different types of 30-day traffic ordinances to see if something, flows or something doesn't. I think that might be something we could be discussing too. Because sometimes you don't know something's gonna work or not until you road test it,
Sure.
literally. So. And you would be willing to work with us on that?
Parking has been an issue.
Mhm.
I'm willing to work with anybody to try to solve it. What it is. Maybe it is changing the ordinance. Maybe it is, I've talked to other communities, they don't have time limit parking. I don't know. So those are things, again, we have to think about what's reasonable for the city of Buchanan with the downtown parking. What's going to be best for everybody?
Well, one of the reasons it went to 3 hours where most communities that do have a time limit are at 2 hours, because we had several hairdressing businesses downtown,
Mhm.
and they said you need more than 2 hours for their customers. So that's why we went to 3. So at that time, we were trying to be responsive to some of the needs of the businesses. Now, there's a different mix down there, and that, I think, definitely calls for another look at that ordinance itself.
Yes.
So we'll be interested in seeing what the city attorney also tells us about that. Commissioner Downey?
And I'd like to note, because of the 3 hours over the 2 hours at the beauty shops, we do have the prettiest girls in the county.
Duly noted.
And because they didn't have to go in their rollers and get their car moved. All right, well, thank you so much
Thank
for
you.
your,
Appreciate it. Thank you very much.
and it is a very tender kind of, people are very passionate about it,
Yes.
and hopefully you can keep encouraging people to be considerate of their neighbors, and
Yes.
maybe some of this angst will be resolved with just being neighborly.
Yes.
So good luck trying to do that too.
Thank you. I
Thank
will.
you. Okay, appreciate
Thanks,
it.
Tim.
Okay, very good. And we're now moving to new business. Kim, we're going to bring up your funding application for the Dial Ride. Can you just give us a quick idea of what that is for the people who have not heard about that before?
Sure. The annual funding application is for fiscal year 2021. In this application, we are applying for both state and federal match for our operations. We are applying under 2 federal sections for 2021, and those are Section 5311, which is non-urban, and Section 5307, which is small urban. And we are also applying for state match. Section 5311 and state match are both formula matches, and that's X number of percent of eligible operating expenses. So we take our eligible operating expenses times whatever percent, that's how much money we're going to get. The Section 5307 small urban is a new thing, and that will be the product of negotiation. And we will be negotiating for a part of the pot of money that is given to the Michiana Area Council of Governments and the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission. Those are MPOs, Metropolitan Planning Organizations. So we will be competing with the South Bend Transit System, Transpo, Niles Dial-A-Ride, the South Shore Train System, and then there will be us. They have called that meeting for next week. It's usually in April, but it's going to be next week. It's going to be a baptism by fire for me. It's going to be quite the learning experience, but I will have the assistance of the Southwest Michigan Planning Commission as far as how to handle the negotiations and who needs to be finessed and all of this kind of thing. And we will see how that goes. It's one of those consequences that comes as an accident of birth. It's a result of our location, not of our character. I consider this Mayberry in the finest sense of that word. I don't really think it's appropriate to lump us in with small urbans because that's not our character, but that is our geography, and so I don't really have a choice in the matter. So I am hoping that the negotiations will go well. That is probably the most important part of this funding application. The rest of it, we have an accessibility plan where we have to affirm that we will keep all of our vehicles accessible, and that is an ADA requirement. We also talk about the efforts that we make to coordinate with other transportation providers within our service area. And I think I've already mentioned we work very closely with Berrien Bus because we are garaged together in Berrien Springs. And we may help each other out. Mainly it's Berrien Bus helping us out here in Buchanan. If there's something that we can't do, Berrien Bus can, or we don't really work with the Benton Harbor system. We work with Niles Dial-A-Ride. If there's someone with a really difficult trip that they have to make, we all know each other. And we call each other up and we say, hey, can we make this happen? Can you meet us at XYZ spot? What can we do to make this work for this person? And we get together quite often, all of the operations manager and the staff of all the various transit systems. We get along well, we work with each other because, you know, it's not about our turf, like, no, you can't come into my turf. It's more about how can we help these people. So we include a narrative about our coordination plan as well. The rest of it is boilerplate. It's required by either the state or the feds. The labor warranties, the affirmations that yes, if it is a regulation, we will comply with it. And the application, I've been doing this for a lot of years now. There has been very little change in the application. So what you're looking at now was the same application that I came to you in January of 2007 with. It's basically the same thing. I'm happy to answer any questions.
Anyone have any questions? Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the funding application for Dial-A-Ride. Anyone ready to make a motion?
I'll make a motion to approve the annual funding application for Dial-A-Ride.
Is there support?
I'll support.
Okay, we have a motion and support. Any further discussion? Okay, roll call, please.
Downey?
Yes.
Moore?
Yes.
Attorney?
Yes.
Whedon?
Yes.
Dennison?
Yes.
Motion carried.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, we are moving down to agenda item C, consider approval of the renewal of the medical marijuana facility permit for Michiana Farm to operate a Class B grow and processor facility at 302 Post Road.
Anyway.
We have an updated one.
We got the updated one.
Mayor and Commissioners, this item is on your agenda for tonight, and we have two representatives here from Michiana Farm to answer your questions. As you're aware, I mean, if you ask them a question and feel comfortable answering it in a public forum, that's fine. If not, if they request confidentiality, then we'll need to go into closed session to take care of their questions. But here behind me are Robert, I'm going to mispronounce your name, Gasco. Close. He's the president of Michiana Farm, and Jim Phelan. They are both here tonight. If you want to address them individually, please do so, or if there are any questions that I can answer, I'm happy to do that. In your packet, you had their application, as well as the routing form. You just kept the same one from the original application, and then the information that they provided on their financial status, their funding availability to complete the project, as well as the attestations that have been submitted to the state. They were pre-qualified last year in November, and they're working their way through the process. They also understand that once they are approved, both here and at the state, they'll need to, their site plan was approved, but they'll need to come back, recheck with Guy and everything on the build-out according to all our ordinances. So,
Excellent.
if you have any questions, I'm happy to answer them, or Robert or Joe can.
Commissioner, Attorney?
Maybe Rick can answer my questions. Hello and welcome.
Thanks for having us.
Basically, I just have two questions. How close are you to getting your state license from the state of Michigan?
So the state did all the due diligence with the owners personally. They've already gone through and probed the CPAs and all the financials for the loans and all the network going. They're currently waiting back the background for the fingerprints, as well as they have a new policy now that if any arrests or anything bad happen to the property can be pushed out. So they're doing a history on the EIN number for their property as well. After that comes through, then they're gonna actually go through the process with us for the building permits themselves first, and they have to approve the permits before we can come before you and go. to
So
get
do you
it
have
approved.
any
Every
idea?
time they give us a deadline, they've gone a little further.
Further.
So, it started with the financials in the 2 years, and I mean, in the last month, they've had us pull out every financial statement for every stock that the owners have ever owned for every month's statement for the last 5 years of their lives. So, they've got a lot more thorough and a lot more diligent in their process over the last year, as they've learned what they've gone through and the people they've approved already. So it's gotten a little stricter, but we're enjoying it.
My other question is, based on what you just told me about the licensing, we're probably not looking at any construction for at least 6 months?
We're hoping a lot sooner than that. From what we picked up with them, they give us a preliminary approval of all of our background once that's done. Upon that preliminary approval, then we go to the permitting of the building, and upon that layout done and everything approved by there, we have to get the permitting approved by you. We have about 60 days to have that up before they come back in to give our final license. So they give us almost a 60-day window from you guys getting our permits and us building it out.
So that's when we're hoping that construction will start, 60 days. And I'm sure you'll keep Deborah well informed. Okay. Thank you.
Are there any other questions? Thank you for coming, and
Yes.
we're happy to review this.
Thank you.
Is there a motion to approve the renewal of the facility permit?
I'll make the motion to approve the renewal of the medical marijuana facility permit for Michiana Farm to operate a Class B grow processor facility at 302 Post Road.
I will support.
Okay, we have a motion with a second. Is there any further discussion? Seeing no one? Roll call, please.
Dennison,
Yes.
Whedon,
Yes.
Moore,
Yes.
Downey,
Yes.
and Turner.
Yes.
Motion
Okay.
carries.
Yeah, no doubt.
Thank you, Deborah.
Excuse me.
Okay, our next new business item is recognizing Barbara Pitcher, our new city clerk. I wanted to give you a little bit of a summary of her. Barbara Pitcher was working at City Hall in a seasonal role, and she was recently hired to become our new city clerk. She is highly qualified, has an advanced degree, and is her own business owner. Her special skill sets include organizational and administrative skills, and is also experienced with websites and many other things that we've been looking to expand and improve on. So I would like to congratulate her on her recent hiring and would like to invite her to say a few words, and welcome, Barbara.
Thank you, Mayor and Commissioners. So I just want to elaborate a little bit on what Mayor Moore told you about me. I've got a broad background in organizational development, many years in global leadership development, post-secondary education, and nonprofit organizations. Over the last 12 years, I've split my time between my own business consulting business and nonprofit organizations. I'm new to municipalities, but I will rely on the great groundwork that my predecessor, Brenda Hess, put in place, the knowledge of my colleagues, and a little bit of help from the commission as well to negotiate that learning curve. So I'm looking forward to serving the city of Buchanan.
We welcome
We
you
welcome
again,
you. Yes.
and thank you to the staff for anything you can do to ease the process, and we look forward to seeing your minutes and everything else that we really require and appreciate all your hard work that's you've done and that you're going to do for us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Welcome
Thanks.
aboard.
Okay, now we are at public comments. Citizens are allowed up to 3 minutes to discuss any non-agenda item. And I do understand we have written comments, if someone would like to read.
I received a written comment from Mr. Vigansky, and he simply asked, how long do you intend on keeping me muzzled? And November 10th, 2020 is written on this as well. And that's all.
Thank you. Any other comments? Anyone want to come forward?
I'd like to come forward. Speaking as a chance to, but I just need to make something clear. Everybody's making an issue about marking the tires. I don't care if a customer comes downtown for 6 hours. I don't care. I'm talking about the employees and the business owners. The second part of the ordinance, that are down there all day, every day.
Well,
6 to 10 of them.
let me kind of interrupt you for a minute. This section is for discussing anything that wasn't on the agenda, and I would appreciate it then to definitely continue to talk to the Chief Gaines and Chief Marks about your comments. So this is for a little bit different. You can talk about something
Obviously,
else.
the second part of the ordinance wasn't on the agenda because no one talked. All you talk about is marking the tires. That's not the issue.
Okay, well, appreciate you coming forward. Is there anyone else? Commissioner?
Cameron Downey, 113 East Front Street, Buchanan, Michigan. I would like you to explain to everybody how you can shut someone down from speaking at a public comment.
The charter gives me the control of this meeting, and my responsibility is to keep the order. That order has been disrupted by a certain individual, and to the point requiring that person to be physically removed. I do not want to have an interaction where that person has to say to the police, "Don't touch me," on his way out. That is a potential that could cause some problem that we can foresee, and I'm not going to accept that potential problem. So when I asked that individual to come forward only to be recognized to state that he was aware that he had done something that was out of order and that he would not do it again, he refused. So this is why I am not giving him an opportunity to disrupt the meeting. He can have his comments, his constitutional rights are protected, and the charter says to have reasonable access. He has access through written verbiage, but I am not going to invite him to come forward and have a performance because he's being disruptive, and he will not acknowledge that he is a disruptive person in his comments, and he said he had nothing to apologize for. So if he had something to apologize for, if he saw that he was making a disruption, then I might reconsider giving him a free microphone. But he has every right to make a comment, and your responsibility is, if you disagree as a commissioner with something that is in my ruling, that this is how I'm handling a disruptive person who is disorderly, you could make a motion at this meeting and you could all vote to overturn my ruling. That is your right to do. That is how but that's my explanation.
Okay, so do you have an idea how long this is going to be before he's allowed to speak in public again?
I have no idea, because it mostly depends on him, and
All right, thank you.
You haven't given me the opportunity to apologize to him. And the fact that I tell him I should keep his hands off of me, not disruptive.
you're out of order right now. Mr. Vagonsky, you gave written comments. You're out of order right now. You didn't even ask to be recognized. This is the example that I'm talking about. Right there, you're being disorderly.
You slandered me just now, publicly, by telling me I was a threat to a police officer. That's slander, Pat. So, you know,
All right.
you ought to be real careful.
Any other public comments? All right. And did someone have any comments from the city manager to convey? Okay. All right. Then let's just start from here and go straight down for the commissioner comments.
You want Mark first?
Yeah.
Mark, go ahead.
So I just wanted to, I wanted to address Leland's last comment. So since you were cut off by justification, right? It is what it is. But Tim, I think you had brought a good point to the table. What's reasonable, right? I think those are good words to use. And this is exactly why I brought it up last time, right? Not one of us is as smart as all of us. And when we continue to just bypass the discussion and not utilize everybody's knowledge of what's going on downtown from our business owners, the experiences that they go through, and the difficulties they have from individuals parking that should not be parking in the C3 area if they are employed in those businesses, I believe it is our obligation to entertain the idea of looking at our ordinance. And as we move forward and we continue to grow in this community, do we need to change how we have that written, right? That's our responsibility, to give that opportunity back to the business owners, because we've been handcuffed by chalking of the tires. It's not something that Leland is off the table. And Tim, I want to thank you for bringing that to our attention, that, hey, maybe we need to look at that. Maybe we need to look at our ordinance. It's what is that's not out of the realm of possibilities. And I couldn't agree with you more. And maybe it's going to take us commissioners going to these businesses, and maybe the police have, I'm sure, and just ask them kindly to have their employees, please do not park in spaces that could be utilized by customers who are going to be purchasing services at these establishments and could have turnover business. I would imagine that every business downtown that has services such as that would agree that they want to have as many spaces available. It's just like tables at Dan's establishment, right? In Leland yours as well. That revenue is generated by turnover, right? That's the whole basis of your business.
Can I speak out of order on that, Mr. Whitman?
No, no.
We'll sign it
Are you done?
Okay.
Okay. Commissioner Turner?
Thank you, Your Honor. I'm not going to speak too much about issues. I'm going to just make a couple thank yous to a few people. Some of you are aware that my wife has been pretty ill. I've been pretty ill. I want to thank Beth Chubb for all her letters and her calls. Deborah Patzer for the popcorn that really made her day. Pat Moore for her thoughts. Brenda Hess for all her thoughts as being a good neighbor and for someone that the city of Buchanan is truly going to miss and that we're going to miss. There are lots of other people who have been very kind to us. My wife has done quite a bit for this city for many years, and I'm just proud that all these people were actually showing her a guiding light in these misguided times. So I just wanted to say thank you to everybody who has given us a lot of good thought, good notes. That is all, Mayor.
Thank you. Commissioner Downey?
Thank you. I would like to put on the agenda for the next meeting a discussion about parking and different options we have for parking. I'd also like to say that I'm on the Water and Sewer Board, and the discussion of trying to figure out a way to help the drainage of the water that is downtown between Days Avenue and Redbud along Front Street and all those buildings. So it's in our thoughts, and when we do the sewer project, we're going to try to incorporate something into that. Also, the fire inspections. Okay, I brought up months ago about doing some rental inspections in Buchanan. And today when I talked to John as he came out to the restaurant, some very important factors came up that maybe we need to reconsider. And maybe we should have this discussion in our next meeting or soon. There are a number of rental units in Buchanan. No one really knows how many. And mostly I'm talking about the duplexes and stuff like that, or somebody renting a basement. But it includes anything downtown and the apartment buildings. There are no inspections done on these. Now, in St. Joe, what they do is a fireman comes in once every 2 years. It costs the owner $35 per unit, so it's relatively cheap, and they just do a quick, make sure that their smoke detectors are working, make sure they have batteries in them. They look for peeling paint on the windows, because what that is, it's like kindling. If you touch a match to something that's smoothly painted, the match will go out eventually. But when there's peeling paint, it's like, excuse me. I'd like to maybe introduce an ordinance that would require all rental units to be registered with the city, and then we could move on from there. One of the most important reasons for doing this is that when John walked into that house, and he wasn't the only fireman, on the corner of Dewey and Main Street, as they're in there fighting this fire, down by his feet is a space heater next to several bottles of oxygen. And if he would have been in there weeks earlier, he could have warned them about that and had them removed. But in this case here, if they would have known they were right there in that fire, they wouldn't have entered the building at all. If they would have blown up, we could have lost who knows how many people.
That's all I have. Excuse me.
Thank you, Commissioner Dennison.
I have nothing.
Okay. And I agree that we should continue the parking discussion, and also would invite you to bring these comments up in our goal-setting sessions, too, because that is an opportunity. We have a morning to discuss things that we need to discuss and prioritize things. Sure.
Can I say something? On that note, and I don't want to tell anybody how to run their meetings. I know you're in charge of running the meetings. It just seems to me that if there's people who take their time to come to a public meeting, and they're being civil, and they ask us, or they kind of rebut to some of our comments, or they, it seems like we could recognize them if they're being civil and have a little bit of a discussion at the moment we're discussing that subject. It seems like it would be very helpful rather than just shutting them down. That's the only comment I have.
That's fine. Okay, and with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn the meeting.
I'll make a motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
I'll support.
All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any nays? Ayes have it, the meeting's adjourned.